Hey all, Pixel here, in Probable Garage. Back in the Cyberpunk cube, doing those front brakes that we discovered we needed to do. I ordered rotors, pads. This should be pretty quick, gonna just slap it in, slap it out. Apparently it's triple magnet day at Rock Auto. Gotta admit, Dustin does have a cool DeSoto. So I went and got myself screwdrivers do not make good knives. I got myself a coated rotor. I couldn't find one that had the coating all the way around everything, but the whole inside of the vents and the hat is all coated, so hopefully it'll, you know, be a little less nasty than the one that's already on here. And then I got these Bosch ceramic. They're the Bosch Blue Line, I think they're called, though it doesn't say that on the box. I like these for the silliest reason. One, they're good pads. I've never had a problem with them. But, hardware kit, they wrap the pads themselves in a blue shop towel instead of plastic, which I like for the lack of waste and, hey, free shop towel. So, this should be pretty quick. 2 bolts, pop the caliper off. 2 more bolts, pop the bracket off. And then compress the caliper down and put all the new stuff on. Yeah. Hell. Half the screw stuff that I need is probably going to be right around here anyway, because I was taking the brakes off to do the wheel bearing. The only thing I know I'm going to need is that 19 mil, because the bracket bolts are now different on this side. And then we'll see whether they stayed on properly or not. I mean, realistically, with how hard I cranked them down. I edited it out of the video, but literally, like, cranked it down so hard on one of them that I let out a little fart. So, old pads. Like, I'm not out of life. Like, the pads still have a fair chunk on them. They were actually this way. I put them in the other way around and realized it only after I started building stuff together. But one, there's uneven pad wear, you can see. And then this one's got a lot of crap in the center, so it's not, the pad's not cleaning itself properly. So yeah, those are still on there tight. Even the bottom one that, ugh. Yeah, you may have noticed in the previous video, while I was talking to you all at the end, tightening down the bolts, I actually finished tightening the top one, went back to double check the bottom one, and turned it in the wrong direction. It's actually it didn't loosen because it was so tight, but turned it the wrong way. Fortunately, I did realize it half a second after I'd done it, and then just finished talking to the camera and went back and double checked both of them again, and then put the wheel back on. So I'm gonna clean that up some. Take this rotor off. Yeah, this is what I was talking about with the rotor. It's just kind of gnarly back here. It clearly got a fairly large amount of surface rust on it that then got polished off. Not sure why. Same thing happened on the van where the back of the rotor had a lot of rust, way more than the front ever had. The van rotors, the front looked fine, but the backs had gnarly pits in it. And if I remember correctly, the other side of this does too. So not sure what's causing that. If anybody knows why the back of the rotor would rust more than the front, love to know. God, play with fire here. I'm going to play with induction torch instead. That bleeder is very, very tight, and I do not want to snap it off. All right. I swear, I just love this induction heater more every single time I use it. Like, I'm genuinely impressed with this thing because I have yet to have a bolt that I use this on that didn't come off, and I've yet to have a bolt that I use this on that snapped. I believe, yeah. There's been a couple that have still been a little sketchy, but everything has survived. I think I maybe need to retire that tip. Wow. There we go. And we are free. Oh, and that is toasty warm. It's cooking the brake fluid as it droops out of it. So we're going to reclose that. Oh, you can be quiet now. It's just about to start cleaning the grooves out here, and there's a big lump of something in there. I don't know what it is. Huh. Some hard-ish substance in the groove that hardware is supposed to sit in, which is probably why that pad is so hard to get in and out of there when I was doing taking it apart before. I'm wondering if that's the reason that the outer one had less wear. I'm wondering if that chunk of whatever that's in here jammed it up. It almost looks like hardened anti-seize, but I don't think it is. Like, I really should go through and paint this and the caliper, make it all look nice, but at the moment I don't have wheels that show it off, so can't manage to care that much. And these move good, and there's no tears in them. How easily are you going to come apart? Yeah, you're fine. Put that in. I'm checking for rust in here is what I'm doing. Because these sliders, they're all gooey with grease. I'm not sure what color the grease was originally in here, so this might be somewhat gross, but it's not rusty. The biggest thing with these is if it's dry in there, or if that grease has is rusty colored, you know that you have an issue. And if these can't move in and out properly, the caliper can't move in and out, and you end up with really bad uneven pad wear because it basically can't adjust for the pad and it can't grab properly. So it's always worth popping those out. For the rare few of you who've been around long enough, the Magnum wagon that I had, the rear ones of these were rusted solid, and I literally had to go through multiple of these brackets from the junkyard before I found a good set. So the big piston that's in here in the caliper, as your pad wears, like this is the piston, when you push the brake, it pushes this piston out. As the pad wears, that piston stays out more and more. That's how it takes up the space of the pad wear. So when you put new pads in, you've got to retract the piston back usually, with 99% of cars, you have to retract it flush back to the body. There's a couple ways to do it. I used to do it with a big C clamp. Someone turned me on to doing it with a pair of this kind of vice grips, the big C ones, and that I have found has worked really well. The big thing is you always want to crack open the bleeder and then compress the piston, so that as you push the piston back in, the fluid that's in there needs to go somewhere. If I was cleaner about this, I would put my bleeder on it so it would go into the tank. That would be smart. Maybe we'll do that on the other side. Maybe we'll be smarter on that side. But, oh, I just heard you suck air. You little son of a... Screwed up there. I let off with the clamp to readjust it with this open, and just it sucked a little air, and I think I got it back out again. But I'm gonna set this side to gravity bleed, I think, once I get everything back together. But you want to, when you're compressing that piston, you saw the fluid that squirted out. You do not want to just push that fluid back into the system. It's just not good for it, because any crud that's in the caliper, you're forcing quite far back up into the system. You're also forcing it back up into the master cylinder. If the master cylinder's already filled to the proper level, you're now overfilling it. You're putting pressure on the seals in there that don't need, it's not like terrible. I've done it. Like, I've had brakes where the bleeder won't crack loose, and I'm not going to buy a whole new caliper because the bleeder is stuck. So I have just pushed those back in, but in general you don't want to. So it's easy enough to just open the bleeder, do it that way. So now I'm going to put a very thin coat of anti-seize on the hub. There are people who say you shouldn't do this. Those people don't live in New England, because I have had to hammer too damn many rotors off of hubs that had become one to be willing to not do this anymore, either for myself or for the next person down the line. New rotor. Oh, look at that. That's so pretty. Let me clean that off. Only doing this on this side, I think, unless the other ones are at all loose. But I just don't. I no longer trust these two bolts on this side to not fall out, you know, because the did. Brakes fall apart once, shame on you. Brakes fall apart twice, shame on me. I'm appearing in a very chatty and silly mood right now, because most of the time this is usually just a time lapse. But you're getting blathering pixel tonight. You're watching this for how to do cube brakes? Why? But anyway, there's the simple bracket and the bracket with these extra springy bits. Extra springy bits go at the top. So this is there. Springy bit goes in loopy bit. And yeah, I'm loopy today. That's what it is. These extra wings here go into this. So that's something, I guess. Oh, I see. It keeps a little extra tension on the whole shebang. Got it. Okay, Jesus. Oh. Really? All right, well, that's it. That was a pain in the butt. Really didn't need to be. Okay, and caliper on. Hardware caliper. Don't like that design at all. That was absolute faff and really doesn't feel like it needs to be. I don't know. Not saying I know better than engineers, because I'd be wrong, but it just sometimes feels, from the standpoint of the guy who's working on the thing, like sometimes stuff gets redesigned and complicated that doesn't really need to be. Like, I don't know what that all adds to the process. I've just gotten to the point I don't trust impact tools to be the final arbiter of tight. Anything I tighten with a gun, I go back and do by hand, because too often I've found things like this bottom bolt down here that I could turn another like eighth of a turn. I don't know, I think there's an inconsistency. Good. Now, check. Yeah, bushing's okay. So this is a thing that's bugging me right now. I did all this work on the front end. Brand new control arms, brand new strut assemblies, brand new sway bar links, brand new axles. On this side I got a new wheel bearing. And I swear that now the front end has a clunk. Not even clunk isn't even the right word. Maybe this is something everybody knows, maybe this is something that's just me, but there's a particular sort of somewhere between a sound and a feeling in a vehicle that's like something's loose with the unsprung part of the suspension, that when you hit something, especially at slow speeds like a bump or whatever, sometimes you'll kind of feel like you hear a clunk, but you're not sure you're actually hearing it, but you're kind of feeling it, where it's just like something feels like, you know, two parts are whacking into each other because they're not as tight as they should be. They're not locked together. There's, you know, usually it's a worn bushing or, you know, ball joint or something like that, where the two pieces have just enough movement that there's that moment where they slam together because you've hit a bump or a pothole or speed bump or whatever. And I swear I'm getting that now where I wasn't before. I was getting I had other problems with the front end. There was a tunk, tunk, tunk. There was the definite sound of a bad outer CV joint that like under tight turns, you can hear the clicking. And there was also the sound of what was almost certainly a bad strut top mount bearing, where when you turned the wheel at a stop, you could hear a sort of clicking, grinding noise as the wheel got turned, which was almost certainly one of the strut tops, that bearing in there being bad. And like, you know, the bushings were blown out on the control arm, especially on the other side, there was a bushing that was completely out. So like, all this work wasn't wasted, but it's really frustrating to have done all that work and still now have a noise. And it's really bugging me because I can't figure out what the heck is going on, because I've replaced all the wear parts. Like, the only front suspension thing I haven't replaced is the sway bar bushings. That's what I was just looking at, and they seem fine. Like, they're not, there's no tearing or anything, and right now they're loaded in a weird direction, so if there was tearing, it'd probably be really visible. The tie rods are nice and tight. There's no play in them. So, yeah, I don't know. There's also a whir noise. That's what I thought was the wheel bearing, and which I'm really hoping is that all the weirdness with the brakes. But that clunk feeling really bugs me. There's also, when you start the car, when you shut the car off, there's a bit of a thunk noise, almost like the engine assembly's moving back and forth. And that also bugs me because I replaced that lower vibration mount. So I need to look, in that case, I need to look into other engine mounts, because there's at least one more. There's another strut rod up at the top that I replaced earlier, but there's an engine mount there, and I'm sure there's at least one more, if not two, other engine mounts. So, but yeah. The only thing more frustrating than doing work in it not fixing the problem is doing work in it feeling like it created a new problem. So we're going to put a little bit of anti-seize on the rotor face. So again, shit doesn't weld itself together. When I do this, I try and have very little anti-seize on the brush, and then whatever little amount of anti-seize there is on the brush, I try and spread. I'm trying to get the coating as thin as possible. Like, this isn't glob a bunch of anti-seize on, because I don't want to create a whole layer in there. But I need to do that because I've fought wheels to get them off way too many times. I will tighten those down when the car's on the ground. There's no point in trying to tighten them with the breaker bar when it's up in the air like this. But brakes are done on that side. Okay, look, if I put you over on this side, I don't have to step over you if I need tools. He's learning. In another, 20 or 30 years, I'll be good at this YouTube stuff. That tire is done. All right, well, add that to the list. I have actually been looking, not for tires, I've been looking for wheels and trying to find something interesting. And unfortunately, the couple of really cool ones I've found at my very limited budget, people have just not responded. The joys of Facebook Marketplace. Like, message somebody, hey, I'm interested in these wheels. I'd like to arrange to buy them off of you. Zero response. My favorite are the ones who don't reply when you message them saying, hey, I want to buy your thing. You know what? Let's get that bleeder loose now. And then continue to either lower the price of the item, or sometimes they even get like pissy in the comments about it. About like, don't reply if you're not going to follow through, or don't reply if you're not going to buy this or whatever. And it's like, take your own advice. Okay. I forgot to put the little rubber cap back on the other side. Hell. Not even sure where it ended up. And then this one just came loose, no problem. Why? Because I was ready for it. We're saying, nah, ha ha! You thought it would be easier on this side. I lured you into a false sense of security with my bleeder screw. No! Oh, I am in a mood tonight. My friend Mike invited me to go to a comedy show tonight, but apparently instead it's comedy hour in the garage. I mean, I think I'm funny. You all clicked on the video, you're just along for the ride. It does not want to compress. I'm fighting this one. It's compressing, it's just not happy about it. I have an entire drawer labeled C-clamp. And there's some little tiny ones in there. I don't even remember where I got them. And this big honker that I have had for a amount of time that as soon as I figure it out is going to make me feel very old. Because, let's see, I bought this to do the brakes on my Taurus wagon. So that would have been 1997, 98? I think 98. So yeah, I feel old. And this poor clamp. It's actually bent. The thread, I don't know if it's a thread or the clamp itself that's bent, but it no longer is in perfect line with the pad at the end because it's been jammed into a bunch of random calipers where the part that it was clamped onto on the caliper on the back was not in perfect line with the piston, and it kind of warped the whole shebang. Because when you have one that doesn't want to retract, it's a fight. I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, see? Not even close. But it does the job, as you see. It just did. Sometimes the old ways are the best. Now let's take the rotor off. Put the new one on. Is this the... Okay, yeah. This one, there's a raised ridge all the way around, and there's like there, all in here, all through here. There are definitely spots where the rust went deeper than the rotor then scrubbed off. I'm just not sure why. 2 out of 2 vehicles have had more rust on the back side of the rotor than the front, to a significant degree. Weird. honestly, I'm looking at how gnarly the heads of these are the bolts on this side to hold the caliper bracket in place, and I'm kind of wishing I'd bought 4 of those things and replaced these 2 once I got home. Do not really like how nasty those look. Those are going to get replaced. I do not like how that feels. Like the socket's getting kind of stuck on the bolt, which means it's moving on the bolt and overlapping the damaged areas. So I don't like that at all. So I'm not going to do it today because that just, what did you just do? What did you just do? You just slid around the bolt, didn't you? Nope, nope, other way, other way. Nope. Come on. Yep. Yep. Yeah, the socket just got to a certain amount of tight on there and just kind of, yeah, or not really rounding it off, but it's just like it's between the wear and everything. And the fact that the socket's probably 30 years old, just enough to slot, like, move on the bolt in a way I really didn't like. Felt bad. It felt like I thought I'd snap the bolt. So yeah, I will go buy 2 more of those, and I think I can probably do that job without even taking the wheel off. Finally! Alright. That sucked. Alright. Now that's all that. Yeah, and that strut bushing looks, or that sway bar bushing looks okay too. Yeah, and all of this is nice and tight. I double checked every single bolt on here when I did that wheel bearing, because I did not trust anything at that point. And all of it was fine. No looseness in anything. So let's hope the brakes are the source of the noise, even though I don't really believe that. I have to put the, I just realized I need to, did it on the other side, I hadn't done it on this side. I need to put the rear wheel on the front wheel on the rear, because the rears have way more tread. So my silly smiley wheel will end up on the front. What have I done wrong? There we go. Oh, it's just a really tight fit to the jack. The wheel with more tread doesn't fit because the jack's too close. Alright, and again, those are going to get their final tightening once it's on the ground. I don't know how obvious it's been in other shots, but that's my smiley face wheel. I did that when the hubcap disappeared, just so the wheel was more interesting than just a blank one. And I kind of like it. If I put different wheels on there, on this, I may try and figure out some way to keep that sort of theme of it. Not necessarily that face, though I really like it, but one wheel with something different about it. All right, so the brakes are done. So it turns out it's way later at night than I thought it was. I just went in to go like pee and get a drink and whatnot and realized it's when I should be going to bed. So I just let the car down so the tires are on the ground so that I can tighten all those lug nuts so I don't forget. We're trying to minimize stupid here. And I guess I'm going to come back out tomorrow here and do some more stuff. So I'll see you then.